You are making smart moves, although you actually don't have time to do any chess, but you managed to get the third place in the Canadian Junior Championship. Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's really rough to participate when you are out of a sudden not one of the youngest ones, but you have to face all those super hardcore talents, let's say it like that, and
Mhm.
still you reach the third place. And we're going to check out a game of yours. But tell us a little bit, how was the tournament in total, and why? How could you manage to reach the third place? I want to know.
I mean, it was a great tournament. There were a lot of, I was mostly playing against people who were younger than me,
Hmm.
but are already really, really good. And it was definitely a different experience than playing against adults, but I really enjoyed it. I had to really step up my openings game, but overall it was good. And my goal was to get the first place among the girls to qualify for the World Junior Championship, which will be in Mexico in September.
Oh my
And
goodness.
being third overall, I got first between the girls. So I will go to play in September, and I'm excited for it.
Wow, that is really exciting. I mean, first you had Cuba, and now Mexico. So it's yeah, it's probably almost the same flight length gone, but still, it's something very exciting. So you will show us a game where you won as white.
Yeah. So it started with d4. The opponent replied knight f6, and now you might have thought that I would play the London, but no, I decided to go c4. So it's a bit different. And by the way, this was one of the decisive games where my opponent had 5 out of 5, and I had 4.5 out of 5.
Oof.
So I ended up winning this game, and I was even in the lead for one round until I wasn't, because I lost the next one. But that was still a really important and defining game for the rest of the tournaments, and I
Wow.
played the top players for the rest of the tournament too. I'm really glad that I didn't lose like anything in the beginning, so that I wouldn't have to just keep losing rating at the bottom.
Yeah,
So it was like a really relatively like strong tournament, more than I thought it would be. So
nice.
the opening was the reason why I chose it is because the opening is also a bit unique. This is called the Queen's Fianchetto defense. At least that's what it says
Okay.
on my chess base.
That is really something I haven't seen in a while. Did you
Mhm.
expect this opening from your opponent? Did you even have any time to prepare?
Yeah, so weirdly enough, I did. I didn't expect this to be what he would play, but I thought that that was one of the options because he did play it a couple of times as black and as white. So he started
Ah,
playing this b3 as white. So it was just kind of one of the options. I didn't think it would actually happen, but I was still at least, mentally prepared for it
yeah.
to happen.
You weren't
I
like
also haven't seen it
surprised.
a lot.
Uh-huh.
But it has some ideas. It's very similar to the Queen's Indian defense, right?
Hmm.
So in a lot of these lines, probably Black is also going to play with e6. So it's going to be similar to those setups. And
Hmm.
probably the main idea of it is just to throw off your opponent, and maybe if the player had something against the Queen's Indian or against the Nimzo, then it wouldn't really work in the same way here.
Mm.
So that might be the main idea of it, and there's of course some other plans, and it was played a lot by Mamedjarov. That's a name that I saw when I looked at the online database, and there's lots of other players too, especially in Rapid and Blitz. It seems to be popular just to get your opponent a bit out of theory and to get a good playable middle game.
Hmm. Okay. So how did you respond here?
So luckily, because I did somewhat think about this being a possibility, I chose the line that is considered to be the most challenging for Black.
Uh-huh.
So how do you think White should fight for the advantage?
Well, since there's already a fianchetto on the board, I would maybe fight for the center at least. One idea is to push d5 and then go with e4.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And that's actually, I think that's what Black actually wants to happen, because they
Oh,
want to, yeah, so that this is fair that we're going to play e4, but something like this with bishop b4, and suddenly the e pawn is hanging, they're going to ruin our pawn structure. So it's one of those it's a nimzo that is just a bit odd for white, having pushed the pawn so far.
okay.
But still equal, nothing wrong. But this is probably the type of compensation that Black wanted to have for this strong center that they gave up,
Oh, okay. Well,
because
then
now these pawns will get attacked.
that is absolutely true. Yes, yeah. Well, then I would maybe just now I would go into a London variation. Bishop to
Bishop f4.
f4, e3, bishop d3, maybe knight f3. Yeah.
And
So
that's funny. Of
actually,
course, also one of the options to develop, of course, nothing wrong. So I'll show the line that is probably the most punishing one for Black here. So
okay.
the way to fight for the advantage, maybe somebody guessed it, maybe not, it's queen c2. So we all, probably all of us, had the idea to play e4,
Yeah.
and this is one of the ways that it supports it, plus it has a few other ideas in mind. So queen c2 threatens to play e4, and that's a pretty big threat. If this happens, then you for sure know that white is much, much better, and it's not going to be just the space advantage, but also the pieces will get developed, and you'll start pushing back the Black's pieces too. So e4 is not something that Black can really allow unless they want to be minus like 1. So it's a bit too much for a classical game, but in Blitz anything works. So Black has to try to prevent it with d5. And my opponent seemed to know this theory. If he plays this opening quite a bit, then he's gonna know most of the possible replies to it. So I captured, knight took, and of course I played e4. So it's one of those pawn structures that's kind of familiar to the Grunfeld.
It is, yeah.
If you know what I'm talking about, except it's just the wrong, it's the wrong bishop there. So it's definitely a different position, but it's just one of those pawn structures that I knew would be pretty good and rather solid for white.
Good
and now
to
my opponent
know.
play.
Yeah, so I'm like, I'm super, yeah, this is very interesting for me to just know if somebody plays this against me, that knight, queen to c2 is a nice option.
For sure, I recommend it because it's a very clear idea, and if Black wants to stop it, they have to go for this d5 line, and then you get this pawn center, which I think is quite simple to play with. So now the opponent plays e5, so one of those direct approaches. Would you take this pawn or not?
No, I would put my knight to f3 and just wait for Black to take, and then I can take back, and then my center is really nice.
Right. Well, that's exactly what I did. And actually, if you said take, that would still be fine, because you would get to keep that pawn for a long time, probably. But I think that Black gets compensation for it. So they were going to start attacking it. And if you keep holding on, then there might be some trouble with the castling. So it's a bit unclear where to castle, and the development is lagging a bit. So I didn't want to take that pawn either. So you also had that intuition, and I played knight f3 instead. Now my opponent went knight d7, probably one of the typical ways to develop here. And the interesting thing is that if he was going to capture, I wasn't going to capture back, as you said. I was going to sacrifice a pawn and play bishop b5. And that was the one line that I prepared. So that was my whole preparation for this opening, was this line.
Okay.
And the reason is to provoke c6 and then to go bishop back. You know what this is called?
Yeah, I forgot
Bishop
the name for it, but there is.
I think, at least the way I've heard it being called, is the invisible move. So like you could have gone to c4 in the first place, but then c6 wouldn't have been there. So bishop b5 is kind of the invisible move that just provokes some weakness and then comes back to where he wanted to go in the first place.
Nice. All right.
And the idea is just to start developing, start a bit of an attack, and you'll get the pawn back. So it's not really a pawn
Wow.
sacrifice,
That looks good.
but it does look good. So so that didn't happen, and the opponent played knight d7, but I decided to use the same idea with bishop b5.
Uh-huh.
And in case they took, I would already start using that pin and not castle like before, but rather play knight e5. So that was my plan. It doesn't win yet. Unfortunately, black has the c6 move.
Yes.
But I would
now you can
gain
take,
the pawn back and even a second pawn back. So I was happy with this position, and maybe it's not, a full pawn of an advantage, but it's an extra pawn for now. So that was the end of my opening preparation, and I just used the same idea as in the other line, brought the bishop to c4, and from here on, I was on my own. He was probably also on his own, and that's where the tactics started a bit. And the opponent plays bishop d6, which made sense, and I had a suspicion that it might not be the best move. And I started calculating a lot of tactics here. And turns out that there was one winning line here. It's a bit complex, but I wonder if you can find maybe the beginning of it or the idea. But there was one line that led to a win for white already, something that you don't expect on move 10.
No,
but
you don't, yeah.
There was a possibility, and it is a bit unique.
So what I've played in hundreds, probably thousands of blitz and bullet games is to just take on f7. But that, of course, has to be calculated. So there's a couple of things which are actually pointing in this direction to just quickly. I think it's wrong, but who knows? So I take, the king takes, the knight can go to g5. And, of course, the queen has the open file, which is not that often the case, on b3, and that could cause some trouble, maybe. I mean, the king can just literally, it's checkmate if the king would go to g8, right?
That's true.
That is over. There's no piece which can go in between. Yeah, and that would be the queen going there. So now
but
the
I
queen,
think they can defend.
Yeah, and then that's
like this is probably the only way.
That is disappointing, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah. So,
but of course, it has to be calculated, and that's the top thing to look for.
What would go with bishop a3? I just in this very particular line. Sorry, I just this
the one in the back, the one that we.
Yeah, because I saw still saw a fork.
Still chances.
Yeah, so the bishop going to a3. So of course the queen can now. Oh yeah, no, it's also not working.
I can take the queen. Maybe
you just take the queen, and exactly.
And then you have to take it back, and then
this
they
fork
have a move
is
to protect
obsolete,
it.
Unfortunately. Okay, sorry for that. Yeah. So
no, it's definitely something to calculate still, and the f7 square is the key in
it has to
the
be.
key weakness in this position, which is the right way to go.
Thank you. Well, at least. So the next idea, and for you at home, probably you're also guessing a little bit, would be getting the knight to g5 or the bishop to g5. I think the bishop to g5 is, then the bishop can just go back. Yeah, I actually don't know. Or the queen to b3. There's a couple of options. Yeah, there is. I understand why you've been calculating for a while there.
Yeah.
So what
true.
was it?
So it was, we start with knight g5. So that's a move that very typical and that we all see. And after castles, this is the tough position. And that's where I was struggling too, is that if I play queen b3 or something like that, then they can have probably a simple protection with queen e7, and it's not clear what to do next for this f7 square. There's just no more attacks left.
Yeah.
But there is a different way to do it, and it is to play, I'll tell you one move, and then there's also a second good move. So the way to go is f4. So I did see f4, but it wasn't, but then there has to be a follow-up too, right?
Yeah.
So f4 sounds good. If I was castled, I would for sure play f4. So wouldn't even hesitate.
Yes.
Here, maybe a bit hesitant, but if it works tactically, then you might look at it. And the crazy part is that after the capture, what do we do now?
Okay, so this is really crazy. Um, yeah, what do you do? Oh, you take on h7?
No, but that's part of
Okay, okay,
the
okay.
plan.
I'm seeing some stuff now. Um, do you,
You take on h7 now, there might be queen h4.
yeah. So do you play h4?
Exactly. You play
No
h4.
way.
So for one, that makes queen h4 impossible. And for another one is that we are threatening e5 and
Uh-huh.
the h7 mate. But the most important point of the h4 move is just to protect the knight. It was under attack
Oh,
for now. So
no. And now I see the idea. Of course, this can only work because you didn't castle.
exactly. So you probably see the idea now is that even if black kicks the knight, we're gonna keep it there, play e5, and have an unavoidable
Beautiful.
mate right there. There's not even a chance for g6 because we're going to take it and
Absolutely.
checkmate. So
Oh,
this was the winning line with it even still goes on. I would think that this is a crazy outcome, but this is winning because you get the piece back, and you have a lot of mate threats. But to me, this knight g5 wasn't the hard part, but it was to see the follow-up that there is first you need to start with f4 to clear up the center for our pawn advance, and then you had to go h4 to solidify the knight there and to also prevent it from being kicked out. So that was the winning line.
unbelievable. I mean, also beautiful. And I mean, once again, it shows like this is how many moves have been played? 12 or something?
Yeah,
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 so even there, and then it tickles in your nose or something that you go like something is going on here. I don't know what it
yeah.
is, and it is massively difficult to find.
Yeah, that's exactly how I felt. Like maybe there is something. It looks like it's so close and it's almost working, but not quite. But it was this h4 move that sealed the deal, and it's always the hardest ones to make because they're quiet moves
Yeah,
when you
yeah,
think you should be attacking or doing something forcing.
that is
So
rough.
this knight g5 was the winning line. So um, that's not what I played because I didn't see the whole continuation, and I decided to play it simple and just have a simple advantage and just castle it. So white is still better.
Mhm.
Of course, it's not the same checkmate ideas as before, but I did go for your bishop g5 idea.
It's nice
And
because I think, yeah, either the queen has to move or the bishop has to go in between. That is
right,
something annoying.
exactly. So the queen moved, and I guess this is the next part. Is how do you keep white's advantage, and what do we do now?
So let us think a little bit. So, yeah, one of the next ideas would probably see. So, there's a little bit of a threat. If black takes on d4, it's pointing to h2, so the knight has to be a bit careful. I mean, oh, there's so much going on. I think I would probably sacrifice a lot again. I would go knight
There-
d2 and f4.
Oh wow. I mean, I didn't even know that there was a way to sacrifice like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, that's honestly one of the options. Maybe it's not so bad, but there's h6 at some point, and if they get your f4 pawn, then that might not be good.
Yeah, yeah, that is true. So, well, how about we look at what are our weakest pieces, as you also mentioned a couple of times, or which pieces we haven't used, and then we can use one of our rooks,
Rook a to d1 would be a good move. Yeah,
for
this
example.
one maintains a small advantage, a small edge, and it would be a good move. So that's one of the moves I considered too. At the end, I went for something else. So maybe somebody guessed it too. It was to take here, and
Oh.
I did that because I wanted to make the f4 idea work. So we made the trades and played f4. So it's nothing huge, but it is an advantage because of space, because of the piece placement, And I was pretty happy with this position because it seemed low risk and just the positives part, just the positives about my position and not really that many weaknesses. So I'll do the next couple of moves that were pretty forced. So that was the idea with f4. The bishop came back and we traded, went for this. How would you evaluate this position? What do you think about it? You pick white or black?
I would like to be white here because the next move is the rook to f3 and then to h3.
I mean, yes, that's one of the ideas, that too. I also really wanted to play f5 and f6.
I like the pawns on f and e. I like that our bishop is quite active. I like that you blocked their bishop with c6. So that just that is a nice time saver for you. We have to be careful. Queen c5 check is in the air.
So rook f3 right away.
Yeah, that wouldn't be the best choice, no. But maybe king to h1 is also interesting because then it goes into the exact diagonal of the bishop. Did you felt comfortable, but you played the king?
Yeah, I did play the king there. I decided that it was one of those positions where my advantage is pretty permanent. I mean, of course, it's not one of those completely dominating positions, but these pawns are going to be strong for a long time. All of the pieces are coordinated, so so it's in these positions, it's important not to rush and to kind of play it simple before all of your ideas can work. So I didn't sacrifice anything. I don't need to quickly checkmate. And that's why I just played the king there, brought the rook here. And that's true. It's in the diagonal of the bishop. But so far, there's no checkmates. And the bishop and the queen are not going to checkmate alone. So it felt pretty safe. And I think black's king is the one that is a bit less safe if f5 and f6 ever happens. Because the rooks are also ready to join in. So my opponent went king to h8. And I pushed here. And this is where my opponent started thinking for a very long time. Maybe because finally realized that there's not that many good options left for black.
It looks scary, to be honest. Yeah. So if we can turn the board around. So this is often when I'm in a position like this as black, and then I feel like, gosh, something went so wrong. And it's like one of those positions where you go like, oh no, how can I get out? How can I reduce the damage? That is like kind of the
and
feeling.
you didn't lose any material, right? So you can't really blame yourself that much. You didn't really blunder anything, but it's just unpleasant.
Yeah.
So I really expected him to go queen to g5 and try to make some threats on g2, but there was one line that was pretty crushing here. I'm not sure if I would have found it until the end, but what do you think is the line here?
Okay, for you at home, hope you're as engaged as I am, because it feels like that I'm playing a little bit. I would love to get one of the rooks over to the g file, but I can't. It's the queen is can take on e3, the bishop can take on f3. Our queen has to stay on this file for now, on the second. So what can we do here? Well, is it already too early to push f6? Is the question. And then
maybe they will react with g6.
Okay. Then I am clueless once again, I think. What's the plan here? What did you play?
Oh, I didn't play it because queen g5 never happened, but this was one of the key lines to me. And the winning line is e6. So the queen on e7 was doing a really important role of being the blockading and the defending piece there on the 7th rank. But now that it's gone, it's a perfect moment to play e6. And it might look like it simplifies things, and it does. So if black wants to, they can make this trade. And here it's important to take with the rook instead of the bishop.
Okay.
So that we also have some increased ideas with rook f8, rook f7. And so this turns out to be a winning position. I didn't think it was that great, but I thought it was pretty good for white, but I wasn't really convinced that it was that winning. But turns out that it is, because of the idea of doubling on the f file. It's an odd way to do it, but because trading queens leads to a winning endgame. The thing is, black is not in time by just one move to get out of this pin. If they only had a couple of moves to bring the king over, then it would work. But now we're threatening to play e7 with rook f8 mate.
And we cannot move the king. And
no.
we cannot move. Oh, no, now I finally see all of this. Wait a second. So the king has to go to h7, but that is not enough because the bishop just goes to d3 check.
Yeah, or I actually was thinking of this.
Oh my god, oh, what?
I was thinking of this, but the bishop d3 probably works too.
That is beautiful.
So it's a bit of a stretch to see this from the e6 moment. But once again, that was just a way to continue it. Maybe I would have played e6, maybe I wouldn't have been convinced with it, but
so you calculated it that far?
No, not until the end. I would just calculate it probably until here and just have to make a decision. Like, is this winning or not? And
yes,
that's probably where you would start thinking about the next plans.
Not bad.
So that was the e6 line. So maybe because of this, my opponent played f6. So he wanted to lock the position up. I have to push it, and he maybe just wanted to make it a blockade and claim that there's no really way to break through because all of his rooks and the queen defending each other, and that it's going to be fine. And that's where the next part of the game starts, is that it's locked up, but you clearly know that white has this advantage that they will try to turn into a victory all throughout the next game. So what's the next plan? There are a lot of good ones.
There are a lot of good ones. So once again, the idea is to move the rook to e3 and then to h3. But how about we move our rook to d1 and then...
Rook d1 is perfectly good too.
Yeah.
Might even be better than what I did.
And then we can exchange and put the rook to d1 once again and maybe exchange, and maybe that would be enough already. Yeah. That's an idea.
So you would go for the trades. I think it's still good. It might still be winning for white. I thought I wouldn't like the rook trades because I just looked at this rook and I thought that mine are better. So I don't want to trade my nice rook on e1 for this one. And so I came up with a different plan. There's a lot of good ones. As long as we create threats and don't allow any dangerous counterplay, anything in this position is going to be good, but it will take a bit of time to really convert it. So I decided to go for this bishop b5 with the idea of blocking everything.
That is so funny, yeah.
On the d file. So I thought it was a good maneuver because it kind of just blocks out the opponent's rooks from play. And he had to go for a different counterplay. He went for g6 to open up the g file and start attacking on my g2 square.
Oh, yeah. So now be careful. Don't take back with the queen now. Or actually, yeah. It has to be
That's actually fine, but they're not going to take back. If I take, they're going to play rook here.
Interesting, yeah.
And then take back with the rook. So something close to that happened. Also, to be careful not to play this or anything because there's rook d7.
Oops.
So that was another thing. But whenever there's a long-term advantage, I always say that the prophylaxis stage is really important because you just need to neutralize everything the opponent has and only then act on your advantage. So whenever it's long-term, it's not going to go away. My pawn on e6 is protected forever, and so it's never going to go away. So I decided to take some time to just bring my rooks to defend everything there and get my king out of danger for now. And after g3, there's no more rook g2 threats. And the bishop does look strong, but it doesn't attack anything. And the queen, Unfortunately, it wants to be on this diagonal, but it can't be because it would just take too long. And if the queen ever moves, then my pawn is allowed to run. So that would not, that would never really work. So that's for that part of the game, I just made these prophylaxis moves. And I knew that if this attack doesn't work, then my position is totally fine. And turns out that after you neutralize the threats, there is not really much left for the opponent to do. So all the pieces are already at their best, and the rest of them can't really move that much. So he decided to activate the king. And a couple more moves were made. So this was done in the light of my idea of trading the queens. So if the king goes to e7, then maybe it's not so lost at this point. So that was my opponent's plan, to just prevent that from happening and just sit there, and he's not down any material and hopefully be fine. Here was a tactic that existed that I didn't even acknowledge, but maybe you're gonna see it.
There's a tactic here.
Yeah.
Oh.
Doesn't win much, but it still wins a good amount.
I wouldn't consider this a tactic, but no, it's not working. I don't see it, I think.
We always look at checks, captures, and threats whenever we're talking about tactics.
Yeah. So, okay.
That's the top.
I mean, I can give it. There's only so many checks I can give with the queen.
Yeah, checks don't work.
You're laughing so much. This cannot be, right? Queen takes f6? No.
No.
Queen h6 check? So what else is there? Captures. I cannot capture anything else. What?
Why not?
What? I'm so lost. I don't see any tactic here. How about you at home? What's wrong with me? It's not my day, it seems. So
there's only one capture left.
There's only queen takes c4?
No.
Bishop takes b5. That must be it.
Yeah.
My goodness, I still don't see it. No. So originally I had the idea bishop c6. That was the very first idea,
okay.
but it, yeah.
So this?
So, okay.
Well, this one is simple.
Well, that took a while, yes. But there must be something else, which I just thought like...
So the bishop cannot be recaptured.
Exactly.
But they can play rook here.
Exactly. So we takes.
And I think this is the move that doesn't occur immediately. But now that we're here, you know what to look for.
Well, okay, queen b8 check. It has to be. My goodness, that took a while. Apologies for the waiting time.
No.
Wow. I was totally blockaded right now.
So don't worry, I didn't even acknowledge it in the game. Didn't even look in that direction.
Okay. Thank you. I feel a little bit better. Yeah, that's a nice move, actually.
It is a nice move. If you look, if you're really set on finding the tactic, then it does make sense and it does work. So this one existed. The position is still winning, but it would have been nice to do this bishop b5 tactic. So instead, I just went for.
I wanted to go there too with the queen. So just for my defense.
Good. At least we're on the same page. We're on the wrong page, but we're on the same page.
Same page.
So I was making some threats to already do some bishop. Do some queen d8 and e7 tactics, but so far they haven't been working, so I was just quietly improving the pieces, and I like these positions. Whenever there's no counterplay, I can just calmly keep collecting some pawns or just improving my king. And I have enough patience for it. I don't need to win immediately. I
That
don't.
and you're so young and you have that patience. That is really, really cool,
It's
actually.
because I don't have the ability to find crazy tactics. So I can
I
only
doubt
do it
that, but
slowly.
yeah, okay.
I can only be slow. Um, and I just prefer positional play
Yeah.
somehow. So
Well, it goes into hand in hand with what Honorata in our other series, Honorata's Harmony, is doing. She's also she showed us a couple of examples where the game is kind of like this, static. Black cannot move, and white just makes move by move, slowly but surely, gets better and better and better. Takes a pawn
mhm,
here, why not, and all of that. Yeah.
exactly. So that's the safest way to go. And I ended up just going into the end game at some point where I was up 3 pawns already,
Yeah.
and it was a winning end game after that. So I'll just make a couple more. The king came here, the rook came in, and it was basically done. But
It was
of
because also this looks like just this super yeah, there is no big tactics for black right now. There's no cheat moves. There's just it
course,
just looks safe.
exactly. So that was the game. It was an enjoyable one to play because I was never
Super.
in too much danger. And it was also a good one because it was just better out of the opening, so I didn't have to equalize or fight for the advantage. And it was hopefully it might help somebody to know how to play against this surprise opening.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
At
And
least it was
also,
new, it was new for me to learn how to play against it, and I got to play this game in
well,
it.
everything was it's so I learned so much again today. At least I have the feeling
Thank
until I
you.
forgot everything for the next lesson once again. But yeah, it was very, very enjoyable and very informative. Thank you, Svitlana. Thanks
Thank
everybody
you,
for
Arne.
watching. We see each other soon again. Bye bye.